Hello, I'm Marianne Mashiri. Welcome to BBC News. Well, it's the IT failure that has ground industries, retail services and even healthcare to a halt. Aviation, banking, communication, they've all been thrown into chaos today. The cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike has confirmed an update to its software running on Windows devices caused the problem, and it's apologised. It says it's now deployed a fix. Well, Microsoft, which operates Windows, says they've now taken action and all their impacted apps and services have recovered. However, the effects have already been far-reaching. Flights have been grounded, some card payments have stopped working, and pharmacies have been struggling to process prescriptions. We'll be speaking to correspondents across the UK and around the world to bring you the very latest. First, this report from Nick Johnson.
Transport, banks, supermarkets and doctors' surgeries, all cogs in the wheel of our daily lives, all impacted by a major global IT outage. Around the world, flights have been grounded, and here in the UK, rail operator Govia Thameslink, which runs Southern, Thameslink, Gatwick Express and Great Northern, says widespread IT issues have been leading to short notice cancellations. Those trying to see a doctor today have also been struggling. This GP clinic in Barnsley says it has a major issue with no access to its clinical system. And this surgery in Liverpool says it was only dealing with clinically urgent issues due to an outage with its computer systems. NHS England says the majority of GP surgeries are affected. And the National Pharmacy Association says services in community pharmacies, including the accessing of prescriptions from GPs and medicine deliveries, are disrupted. To the high street, where the bakery chain Gales says it's been unable to take in-store payments. This branch in London saying it was only accepting click and collect orders. Banks, including Santander and Metro Bank, have also reported disruption to their systems. And the supermarket Morrisons said earlier it had payment problems in some stores, which have now been resolved. The outage has also reached the comfort of the living room. Blue Peter was replaced by Birdsong on the CBBC channel, and there was intermittent broadcasting from Sky News.
A major global IT outage is hitting businesses worldwide, including here at Sky News.
The cause? Microsoft says it's aware of an issue affecting Windows devices due to an update from a third-party software platform. It says we anticipate a resolution is forthcoming. That third-party platform? The global cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike, which says the outage is not a security incident or cyber attack. The issue, it says, has been identified, isolated, and a fix has been deployed. This is very much a global issue. Police in the US state of Alaska say their 911 emergency phone lines have been affected. Supermarket checkouts in Australia have crashed. And the outage has hit security machines during preparations for the Paris Olympics, forcing staff to carry out manual checks. As and when systems do get back online, it's unclear whether it'll be business as usual or if it will take some time for all those impacted to clear the backlog. Nick Johnson, BBC News.
Well, the CEO of Crowdstrike, George Kurtz, has been speaking to NBC's Today Show, where he said the focus was now on recovering systems which have been shut down. Have a listen.
And I want to start with saying we're deeply sorry for the impact that we've caused to customers, to travelers, to anyone affected by this, including our companies. So we know what the issue is. We're resolving and have resolved the issue now. It's recovering systems that are out there.
Well, that was the boss of the company. Well, who exactly are Crowdstrike and how has this failure delivered such a widespread global impact? Here's our world business reporter, David Waddell. There's
a reason Crowdstrike exists. Above all else, it's to protect software users from the kind of problems we've seen today. As a cybersecurity firm, its big focus is managing external threats from hackers and other bad actors. So it's a huge embarrassment for the company to find itself at the heart of this global situation. The company, based in Austin, Texas, was founded in 2011. 6 years on, it was valued at $1 billion. By the time the Nasdaq closed on Thursday, its market cap, or overall value, was around $84.5 billion. But then it rolled out a content update for its software on Microsoft Windows devices. And here's what happened. The blue screen of death. It sent machines into a boot loop, starting and restarting repeatedly and unsuccessfully. As the company's role in this global story became clear, Crowdstrike's share price fell by over a fifth in pre-market trading. It was still down 15% when the Nasdaq opened. That slashed billions of dollars off the company's value. In a statement earlier, the company CEO, George Kurtz, said this is not a security incident or cyber attack. The issue has been identified, isolated, and a fix has been deployed. But the global disruption continues. Investors will be watching carefully to see how its response to the challenge unfolds.
They will indeed. Yes, David Waddell there. Well, our correspondent Ione Wells is at Reagan International Airport in Washington. She brought us up to date with what's happening across the US.
Well, in the US, the main way that this has impacted customers has been airlines. Some of the biggest airlines here have experienced severe delays, some even cancellations. Latest figures we had that at least 1,300 flights had been delayed, about 675 or so cancelled. Here at Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C., a number of flights have been delayed and cancelled, although most passengers are saying that they've been able to reschedule their flights either for later today or tomorrow. It does seem like most airlines are starting to get things back up and running after today's outage. Now, President Biden has been briefed on the situation, but this is really a kind of airline problem at the moment. It's a technical difficulty they're experiencing. And while things are relatively calm here, we have seen footage of some airports across the US facing more significant disruption with big crowds of people unsure whether they'll be able to get on their flight, but also those infamous blue screens showing that basically nothing is working, people unsure if they're able to check in their bags, if their flight is still running, because screens are showing a total sort of blue, essentially error message at some of the major airports in the US at the moment. Now, things, as I say, are starting to get back up and running. This morning, Delta, which is the world's second biggest operator in terms of passenger numbers, was having to pause flights completely. They are now back up and running. Similarly, major airlines like American Airlines and United were also facing difficulties, but again, slowly things starting to get back to normal. So I think while there has been significant disruption, there probably is likely to be significant disruption. Passengers are slowly starting to get back off the ground again.
Well, that was our correspondent Ione Wells there. She's in Washington. Let's cross live now to the biggest airport in Europe, Heathrow. Our correspondent Lucy Gray is there for us. And Lucy, bring us up to date with what's been happening there.
Hi, Mariam. Yeah, well, this couldn't have happened on a worse day, really, because this was expected to be the busiest weekend for people travelling out by air since the pandemic. So a huge number of people expected in airports across the UK. As you can see, though, here at Heathrow, flights are taking off and landing. They say now the latest update is that there's a stable operation here. Obviously, there have been a lot of delays, but they say that flights are coming in and out smoothly now. But delays all over the country, all over the world, as you've been hearing. It's more than 3,000 flights globally that have been cancelled. That's around 3% of scheduled services. And not all of them, of course, would have been down to the IT outage. But anyway, it means that there's thousands and thousands of people who haven't been getting on those flights. And then it's the connections that they're missing after that as well. In the UK here, it's around over 100 flights that have been cancelled, but there have been so many delays. And that has been the real problem. In terms of what is causing that, in Gatwick, they talked about having to do check-in manually, also issues with the e-gates, so security issues at the e-gates. And in terms of the manual boarding and manual check-in that's been taking place, that's been happening at Manchester Airport, at Stansted, at East Midlands. And also we heard earlier, of course, from Edinburgh Airport, that had to taking place. That's been happening at Manchester Airport, at Stansted, at East Midlands. And also we heard earlier, of course, from Edinburgh Airport, that had to stop flights arriving. That is now back up in operation, but of course it's the knock-on from all of those issues and people in the wrong places at the wrong time that means this is going to go on for some time. In terms of the advice for people, particularly people flying in and out of the UK, there is a duty of care from the airline to look after passengers. So you should be given, if you're delayed for a long time, you should be given food and drinks vouchers, maybe even mobile data as well. And if you're delayed for a long time, you should be given a hotel, and that's from tour operators as well. And there's also advice that we've been hearing today about taking emergency medicine that you need, or anything that you really need, in your hand luggage. Don't put it in your hold luggage because there might be issues with that. So if you need medication or baby formula or whatever it is, make sure you have it in your hand luggage.
Lucy, great advice. Thanks very much indeed. My colleague Lucy Gray there, who is at Heathrow Airport for us. So what could be done to avoid this kind of thing happening again, to avoid seeing the infamous blue screen of death, as it's also called? Well, I spoke to Jake Moore, Global Cybersecurity Advisor at ESET and a former cybercrime officer, about this. Here's what he had to say.
We hear so much about cyber attacks in the news, our data going missing, passwords being compromised. This is just the time that we're living in. But what's come out of this, it's to do with updates. And all software needs to be updated to keep us all secure from threat actors trying to exploit any given vulnerability. But this update, unfortunately, looks like it had a major fault in it, which comes down to a testing issue. But that's the balance between speed of the update getting put out to all those computers, and of course, keeping everyone secure from any known or even unknown vulnerability.
Let me talk to you a little bit more now about, the irony here, because Crowdstrike, is it not a company that provides protection against, in terms of cybersecurity? And it's that update that has really caused problems.
Yeah, and that is going to be a huge thorn in their side for many years. And we've seen issues like this hit many companies in the past. And unfortunately, it's probably not going to be the last one. But we can take so much from this. They and other companies will, of course, learn that we need to do more testing. In that balance period, when we have to look at those patches that need to be sent out, we need to make sure that they are vitally secure, and they're not going to do this again. Because, of course, this blue screen of death that we're seeing around the world, it is a major problem. It then needs manual hands on the computers at this time to rectify it. And that's going to take days for people to get back up and running. So we don't want to see this again. I think if we learn from this, put more resources into that testing phase, and we should see this hopefully mitigated.
That's Jake Moore there from ESET talking to me about the outage. Well, the impact has been far and wide. Officials in France, well, they're breathing a bit of a sigh of relief because they say that the Paris Olympics operations are now running normally after the outage. The city is, of course, just 7 days away from hosting those games. Athletes are already arriving there, and our correspondent Hugh Schofield has been monitoring the situation for us.
When news broke this morning that there was this worldwide problem with IT systems, that they were going down everywhere, obviously here in Paris there was a lot of apprehension because it's a critical moment, a week ahead of the games. As it turns out, the impact has been limited. What the organising committee is saying is that there are problems with some of their systems, but they affect mainly peripheral agenda items like accreditation of journalists and delegations and so on. We had a colleague who arrived, and she had to put off her accreditation because of computer problems. The distribution of uniforms for some staff, again, that's a problem. But the big issues like ticketing, like the last-minute preparation of sites here in central Paris, the passage of the Olympic flame around Northern France, all this is going ahead as planned. The only other area where there might be an issue is with the arrival of delegations, because they're beginning to arrive now, athletes and delegations, and there are going to be some delays because of problems with airlines, but that's kind of an airlines problem and an airport's problem rather than an Olympics problem. So in general, I think what they're saying is that, yes, there has been an impact, yes, they're on it, but thank the Lord, it's been very limited. It's been very limited.
Okay.
Well, let's speak to our Paris correspondent Hugh Schofield, one of many areas impacted by this global outage, not least ahead of the Olympics there, Hugh.
Yeah, obviously Paris is at a critical phase now, just a week ahead of the opening ceremony, Friday week, a week today. And the news that came in this morning was that the Olympics preparations have been impacted by this power cut, but only in a very limited way. What they're saying is that accreditations and the distribution of uniforms to staff has been disrupted. We have a colleague at the BBC who was trying to get her accreditation this morning, and it was put off. So clearly a computer fault there was, the computer fault was being felt there. But other than that, they're saying that life is going on as planned. At sites like here, the Place la Concorde, final preparations are underway. The Olympic flame is circulating on its last legs, and ticketing is unaffected. The only other area where they say there might be some problem is that arriving delegations may be held up because of airline problems, but that's obviously not linked to any problems with the Olympics Committee itself. So an impact, but it would seem a very limited one here.
Limited impact, but of course we're seeing just the broad range of different organisations, different companies, also healthcare services impacted. What kind of reaction across France to this?
Well, the same reaction as everywhere. I mean, this morning people got up hearing this news and it was extremely exciting and worrying news, and everyone was wondering in what way it would impact on their lives. We heard that a couple of broadcasters had similar problems to what you were saying the BBC had there. It seems to be fairly limited in scope. I think initially there was a feeling that this was going to be one of those stories where it really is everything shuts down. I mean, that kind of spectre hangs over all of us, doesn't it? Ever since globalization and the integration of computer systems around the globe, everyone expects one of these biggies to arrive in which everything shuts down. Everything hasn't shut down. Life is pretty much going on as normal, and as the hours of this morning have gone by, it's been clear that it's fairly limited in scope. I'm not trying to play it down, but it certainly wasn't the kind of absolutely global catastrophe that our imaginations allowed us to maybe think it could have been.
Yes, I guess there's this awakening or rather real realisation hitting it home just how dependent we are on all of this IT systems, on all of this. I know that the boss of Crowdstrike, George Kurtz, has been giving an interview to an American network saying that they know what the issue is, they have resolved the issue, but when pressed about how long it will take everything to get back up and running, they said it could take some time for some systems that just automatically won't recover, but adds it's our mission to make sure every customer is fully recovered. It has, it's always interesting to see that France taking it much more, potentially a little bit more stoically than other countries, because there was a bit of a panic in especially when it comes to the travel industries in various different places where we were speaking globally, Hugh, across the world.
Well, yeah. Well, I would say that maybe the impact is a lot worse elsewhere. I mean, certainly we woke up this morning to hear about the impact in Asia, obviously, where life had started several hours earlier, and Australia had been badly hit. ABC News, I think it was off air, or certainly had been hit. East Asian Airlines were affected, and there was this expectation, and the way that the news was sort of relayed was it's going to, this wave is about to hit us here. And I mean, obviously it has hit in a limited way, though. I've come in on the train. The trains are absolutely fine. Airlines are, yes, affected, but it doesn't seem like the airports are particularly affected. In Germany, we learn that Berlin Airport has been closed, though. So it obviously varies from place to place. And yes, we're certainly, and the country and the organisers of the games and the government is very much on the qui-vive to see how things might be affected. But I think a kind of degree of kind of detachment is necessary, and to appreciate that this, that the world has not come to a close, to a standstill. Obviously, it's a reminder, though, when these things do happen, how close we are to that potentially happening and how integrated we all are. A reminder, though, when these things do happen, how close we are to that potentially happening and how integrated we all are, and how glitches in a company quoted on the US stock exchange based in California can have an impact everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere in the world.
Yes, it just shows how interconnected we all are. For the time being, Hugh, lovely to see you in a sunny Paris, getting ready ahead of the Olympics. Thank you very much for just keeping us updated. Hugh Schofield there in Paris. Hugh Schofield there saying that the trains in France, where he was, at least in Paris, didn't seem to be as affected. I'm just having a quick look on the National Rail Network website here in the UK, and there is a big red triangle warning alert, network-wide IT issues affecting a number of train operators. So I think, as always, the advice is to check before you travel.
And Lucy, what's the very latest on the disruption being caused to flights in and out of the UK?
Yeah, so as you were hearing in Katie's piece there, around 100 flights have been cancelled in and out of the UK, and globally around 1,400 have been cancelled. It's really the delays that are the story, though. That's been the main issue here, that people are being majorly delayed. But also, I suppose the questions will come later on when people are going to miss their interconnecting flights. So speaking to American Airlines here in the terminal here, they were saying that earlier people weren't allowed to drop their bags off because of the issue. A lot of people have been having to do things manually by writing out things by hand, of course, around the world. We heard from our colleagues in Delhi talking about whiteboards, flight information up on whiteboards, and people having to write their boarding passes out by hand. But the issue is the delays, and when people start missing those internet connecting flights, what's going to happen then? We were hearing earlier about Edinburgh Airport, weren't we, stopping incoming flights. That's back up and running, but the knock-on effect on the flights there is still going on and will be going on for some time. We were hearing about Berlin Airport earlier being shut. In terms of the UK, this was expected to be the busiest weekend for people leaving, going off on holiday since before the pandemic. So many people looking forward to those holidays abroad that they've been waiting for, and now they're facing huge delays. In terms of what people are allowed to do if they are delayed, the airline has this duty of care to them, that because this is an extraordinary event, you probably won't get a refund for your flight, but they have a duty of care to get you there. So they should be getting you there at some point, and that could also be putting you on another airline. But also in the meantime, they should be giving you food vouchers, drinks vouchers, maybe even phone data so you can keep in touch. It's really important that you keep your receipts for that sort of thing so that you can claim it back afterwards. And also some advice to people who perhaps have emergency medicine that they take with them on holiday. Put that in your hand luggage. Don't put it in the hold, because there could be issues with bags. We've been seeing some people being advised not to bring bags to the airport at all for the hold. Just travel, just to be sure, with your hand luggage. So in terms of the airports here at Heathrow, when a major event often happens, what happens is that the hotels around here get booked up really quickly, but that hasn't happened yet. It seems to be sort of several hours of delays at the moment. We aren't seeing things here turning into hotel bookings as yet, but it's the interconnecting flights that people are missing. So this is going to go on and on because of those issues that we're expecting to keep seeing over the coming days.
Lucy, thank you very much for that update from Heathrow Airport. Lucy Gray there. Well, as we've been hearing, the IT outage has caused severe problems in the UK, retail, railways, the NHS, where many doctors' surgeries in England are able to access services, including booking patient appointments. Let's cross now and speak to our senior UK correspondent, Seema Katecha, who is in the newsroom across the story for us. Seema, and what's the latest on how life here in the UK has been impacted by the outage?
Yeah, we've been talking about how it's impacted lives in Japan, India, Australia, but it's really important to convey how it's affecting people here in their everyday lives. For example, coffee shops have closed down because they're unable to take electronic payments. GP surgeries are issuing prescriptions by hand because they're not able to print them out. And so I've been phone bashing, trying to speak to people who've been affected. And I've spoken to one GP who said that I'm doing what I used to do years ago. I'm issuing prescriptions by hand, and it's really frustrating because it's taking a lot longer than it is to print them out as we usually do. And then a local business in Buckinghamshire that's had to close because it's been unable, as I said, to take electronic payments, has said, I'm worried about the local economy and I'm worried about what dent this will make in my profit margin. I've just come back from COVID in terms of my business. It's now doing well, and I'm worried that this will have a detrimental effect on its revenue going forward. And Royal Surrey NHS Foundation has declared a critical incident due to the IT outage, saying the issue has affected its IT system, we used to deliver radiotherapy this morning. So obviously radiotherapy is used to treat cancer patients, and now people are being told that their appointments that were scheduled for today will no longer take place. And obviously that puts a lot more pressure on patients who are keen to have that crucial treatment to treat their very serious illness. So as I said, it's affecting people in lots of different ways. We've been seeing that some schools are unable to teach their children the curriculum because that's done via IT systems, and so they're having to adapt and do different things. We're not sure how long this impact is going to go on for. We know there's a solution, but obviously, for example, the backlog in the NHS has been there for years. We know the NHS is struggling, and just one day of cancelled appointments will obviously put more pressure on the system and exacerbate those delays. So it's not clear how long the impact will go on for, but I'm being told by some people that, you know, they anticipate that there's going to be a domino effect for a few days yet, at least.
And also, Seema, what's incredible about this is the fact that it's impacted so many different areas of life. As you mentioned, GP surgeries, railways, shops, banks.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, it's impacting travel, it's impacting education, it's impacting health. I mean, just some breaking news for around 5 minutes ago, the devolved Department of Health in Belfast has said around 2/3 of GP practices in Northern Ireland have been affected by the IT outage. The practices are unable to access patient records, generate routine prescriptions, or see the results of lab tests. And that is very important stuff. And if you're a patient who wants your test results or has been anticipating those test results and you're told that they're being delayed, you know, who knows how that could affect you. We know that patients with minor illnesses are being sent to pharmacies for GP surgeries, according to the chief executive of the Independent Pharmacies Association. One doctor has said that pharmacies are experiencing delays in prescriptions arriving through GP systems as the systems are down, and there are delays in receiving medicines in stock due to some wholesalers experiencing IT system failures. So you might think that, you know, your life hasn't been impacted. At the moment, you might be thinking that things are going smoothly, but maybe in the next few hours or in the days to come, you will perhaps experience some delays. Like I said, like this morning when I was in my local town, the cafes were closed and, you know, I was unable to go into a cafe to get my usual coffee because they're unable to take electronic payments. So that's the micro level. If we're looking at a macro level, you're looking at things like healthcare, which are obviously having a detrimental impact and will obviously cause some worry to some people across the country.
So let's ask a few questions now. You know, why did this happen and what are the ways in which businesses can help themselves in future to avoid the impact? Let's cross now and speak to Jake Moore, the Global Cybersecurity Advisor at ESET and former cybercrime officer and police head of digital forensics. It's so good to have on the programme. Let me ask you first of all, if I may, I suppose when this first happened, people were very quick to assume it's a cyber attack. It had a feel of a cyber attack, and yet we found out now it's nothing to do with that. Does that change the way in which people react to it, do you think?
Yeah, I think people do react to these things with worry first. And we hear so much about cyber attacks in the news, our data going missing, passwords being compromised. This is just the time that we're living in. But what's come out of this, it's to do with updates. And all software needs to be updated to keep us all secure from threat actors trying to exploit any given vulnerability. But this update, unfortunately, looks like it had a major fault in it, which comes down to a testing issue. But that's the balance between speed of the update getting put out to all those computers and, of course, keeping everyone secure from any known or even unknown vulnerability.
Let me talk to you a little bit more now about, you know, the irony here, because Crowdstrike, is it not a company that provides protection against, you know, in terms of cybersecurity? And it's that update that has really caused problems.
Yeah, and that is going to be a huge thorn in their side for many years. And we've seen issues like this hit many companies in the past. And unfortunately, it's probably not going to be the last one. But we can take so much from this. They and other companies will, of course, learn that we need to do more testing. In that balance period, when we have to look at those patches that need to be sent out, we need to make sure that they are vitally secure and they're not going to do this again. Because, of course, this blue screen of death that we're seeing around the world, it is a major problem. It then needs manual hands on the computers at this time to rectify it. And that's going to take days for people to get back up and running. So we don't want to see this again. I think if we learn from this, put more resources into that testing phase, and we should see this hopefully mitigated.
OK. Jake Moore, Global Cybersecurity Advisor at ESET. It's been good to get your expertise. Thanks so much, Jake. But one of the sectors that's also dependent on IT is health. And I'm joined now by our health correspondent, Dominic Hughes, who's here with me now. And Dominic, just talk us through what exactly the impact has been on the health service in the UK.
Well, it seems to have been focused mainly on GP surgeries, around 3,700 GP surgeries in England alone. NHS England says the issue relates to a network that's known as EMIS. Now, this is an appointment and patient record system, and it means that GPs can't access the electronic medical records of their patients. Patients can't make online bookings. They're having to revert to a paper system. In terms of hospitals, it's a much more mixed picture. Some hospitals, the Royal Surrey Hospital, for example, declared a critical incident after an IT failure. The IT failure affected radiology services. They couldn't access scans online, for example. Other hospitals say they haven't had any problems at all. Now, in Scotland and Wales, we've had some reports of minor problems, but in Northern Ireland, it does seem to be more severe. About 2/3 of GP practices have been affected. Doctors unable to access patient records, to see test results. Patients haven't been able to make bookings. NHS England say so far, thankfully, there's no impact on the emergency and urgent care system. 999 is still working. They say if you need help today, please try not to bother your GPs because they're obviously under the cosh. They say you should go to NHS 111 online or phone 111 if you need help. And then if it's urgent, go to your GP. But if you have an appointment, you should still attend unless you've been told otherwise.
And you mentioned there the impact on GPs, the impact on the health service. These are areas that are already struggling with the burden of, heavy patient loads and just not enough time to get through that all. So this is going to hit them hard. Yeah,
it is going to hit them hard, and it's probably going to drift into next week. What we're hearing from GPs is that the problems they're experiencing today are not going to be solved overnight. It's going to have a knock-on effect into services next week. And yeah, as you say, those services are already struggling.
OK, and before I let you go, you talked about things improving next week. Do we have a clear picture of which hospitals will get back online the quickest or not?
Well, I mean, the hospitals are such a mixed picture. Right. It's really difficult to say. So some of them, like the Sheffield Teaching Hospital, for example, say they haven't had any issues whatsoever.
It's interesting, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
How some have been hit and some haven't. Why?
It depends on what systems they have bought in, I guess, to manage their patient records, whether they have fully up and running electronic patient record systems, and also some of the imaging systems that they have in the radiology departments, for example. If they have a system that is tied into this area where there has been this failure, then they have problems.
OK, Dominic, good to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us. Our cyber correspondent, Joe Tidy, joins me now from Guildford. And Joe, just for those people who aren't tech savvy, don't know what really we're talking about, just take me back to the bare basics of this story. How did this end up happening?
Well, it all starts with Crowdstrike, which is, as you say, a cybersecurity company, very well respected, very well trusted around the world, particularly by giant organizations. And that's why I think we've seen such a big impact and such an immediate impact, because some of the biggest companies in the world use Crowdstrike. And they have a very popular piece of software called Falcon, which is what we call an endpoint protection piece of software. So it's like an antivirus software that you would download and you would have on your home computer. But there's one of those that's for big companies. And they put out what they hoped was an innocuous software update overnight, which would have made their product a little bit better. Just a small update, the kind of like when we get on our phones, on our mobile phones, we get software updates and we update them, don't we? We do it automatically, normally while we're sleeping, and we don't even really notice. But this one obviously had a flaw in it. There was something wrong with the code that was sent out to all of their customers. And bear in mind, if they've got 24,000 customers around the world, that's 24,000 medium, small, large enterprises. So that is potentially hundreds of thousands of endpoints of computers that receive this bad software update. And somehow on Windows, when the software update was downloaded to a Windows computer, which most of them would have been, it bricked the computer. It broke the computer. It meant that you had this blue screen of death. And that's what people are dealing with all over the world. IT managers are now trying to get what has just been released by Crowdstrike, the correct antidote, if you like, that piece of software. They're trying to get that onto computers. But the problem that we have is that can't be done automatically over the internet. That has to be done with a manual process in most cases. So that is physical, fingers on keyboards to try and solve the issue.
And how long do you think it's going to take for the issues that we've seen to be solved then, given what you're talking about, given the fact that this needs, a physical reboot, so to speak?
Well, I think it's really interesting that you would imagine that the really large customers of Crowdstrike, who have thousands, maybe tens of thousands of computers and servers on their networks, they've all been affected. You'd imagine they would take a long time, but what we're actually seeing is the opposite. I'm seeing that some of the companies that are bouncing back up are the largest ones. American Airlines, for example, you'd imagine they've got thousands of computers across the entire world. They have bounced back pretty quickly. And I think what that is it points to the companies that are large and they've got lots of computers. They're also well funded and they've got IT departments that are well resourced. So I think they have bounced back and they are appearing to bounce back quicker than perhaps the small businesses or the medium-sized businesses that don't have that well-resourced IT teams. They might even outsource their IT to a third party. I think where we might see the real crunch points is when you have a large company that isn't well-resourced in the IT side. So they've got lots and lots of computers and not enough people to fix them.
Well,
porque al final
Pat McFadden, who told the BBC that the major global outage today wasn't a security attack or a hostile act. He said that it appears to be a software error and that the cause has been identified and the fix is being put in place. Well, let's now speak to Daniel Teacher, who is someone who looks into, he's director of TTEC. He looks into how these outages affect businesses, smaller businesses in particular, who've been impacted widely by these. Daniel, good to talk to you. Just talk me through what exactly the impact has been.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. It's a really interesting and very fast-moving situation. So there's really been two things that have happened, and I think they're being slightly confused. So Microsoft themselves had an issue overnight, and then at 4 o'clock this morning, Crowdstrike issued an update which has rendered many PCs and servers unusable. And that's obviously causing a huge challenge for those people who are using Crowdstrike primarily.
So tell me what challenges specifically hit these smaller businesses and how much more difficult it is to get yourself out of it if you're a smaller business compared to, let's say, a big conglomerate or multinational.
Yeah, no, I was talking to someone earlier who works for a big company, and they obviously have significant resources to deal with this, and they have teams of people and teams of capability, and some of them work 24 hours a day. So, they pick this up in the middle of the night, and so then when people came in this morning, their impact may have been less, whereas small businesses don't have 24/7 teams and they rely on third parties like ourselves. And, when you don't have the scale and those kind of resources, it can really have a much more significant impact, and you can't quite be as agile to respond to these things. And often you're very dependent on other people as well, and you're at their behest.
And you obviously have been looking into this. What do you think about the cause? I mean, we know pretty much what the cause is, but how easy is it for this kind of thing to happen again, do you think?
Yeah, obviously Crowdstrike at the moment are being not really explaining what's going on in terms of the cause. It was very interesting. Their CEO put out a tweet earlier, and he said, it was a minor bit of the software that they issued a rogue update, but it doesn't matter if it's one line of code that is wrong or all of the code that is wrong. If it's wrong, then it causes an issue. And so effectively, the very small component of their software, they issued an update of 4.09 to be precise this morning. And that has conflicted with the Microsoft operating system, which is what almost everybody uses to do their work. And so then when people have received that update, their machine has become unusable. It is relatively easy to fix if you know what you're doing, and that's probably the key part. Small businesses don't always know what they're doing, and so it's really now a race to go round all those machines and try and issue a fix. And I'm also talking to some of the vendors who support lots of IT companies and businesses, and they're looking also to issue more automated fixes, so we don't have to go around manually and click on all of these different devices one by one.
And if I can ask you, obviously you've been talking to businesses. What are the businesses worst impacted by this? What area are they in generally?
Well, so it's really, do you run Crowdstrike or not is actually the differentiation, yeah? So if you're not running Crowdstrike, you may have had some challenges overnight with Microsoft, but you may well have been asleep, so you didn't notice that. Crowdstrike is often used by larger businesses, actually. So I would say that's why you're seeing in the news, lots of airports and financial services people and professional services firms. And ironically, Crowdstrike, I don't know if you're aware, is a protection tool from a cyber attack. So, you obviously have to have the budget to pay for that. So people who don't have those tools, ironically, are less impacted by this. But, that tool is there to help you in the event of someone trying to attack your network.
I know the absolute irony of that is not lost on me. Daniel Teacher, good to talk to you, Managing Director of T-Tech. Thank you very much indeed.
A global outage has hit computer systems right around the world, throwing industries from aviation and healthcare to banking and communications into chaos. The cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike has confirmed that an update to its software running on Windows devices caused the problem. It says it's now deployed a fix. But the effects have been far-reaching. Flights have been grounded, some card payments stopped working, and pharmacies struggle to process prescriptions. We'll be speaking to our correspondents across the UK and around the world to bring you the very latest. First, Nick Johnson has this report.
Transport, banks, supermarkets and doctors' surgeries. All cogs in the wheel of our daily lives. All impacted by a major global IT outage. Around the world, flights have been grounded. And here in the UK, rail operator Govia Thameslink, which runs Southern, Thameslink, Gatwick Express and Great Northern, says widespread IT issues have been leading to short-notice cancellations. Those trying to see a doctor today have also been struggling. This GP clinic in Barnsley says it has a major issue with no access to its clinical system. And this surgery in Liverpool says it was only dealing with clinically urgent issues due to an outage with its computer systems. NHS England says the majority of GP surgeries are affected. And the National Pharmacy Association says services in community pharmacies, including the accessing of prescriptions from GPs and medicine deliveries, are disrupted. To the high street, where the bakery chain Gales says it's been unable to take in-store payments. This branch in London saying it was only accepting click and collect orders. Banks, including Santander and Metrobank, have also reported disruption to their systems. And the supermarket Morrisons said earlier it had payment problems in some stores, which have now been resolved. The outage has also reached the comfort of the living room. Blue Peter was replaced by Birdsong on the CBBC channel, and there was intermittent broadcasting from Sky News.
A major global IT outage is hitting businesses worldwide, including here at Sky News.
The cause? Microsoft says it's aware of an issue affecting Windows devices due to an update from a third-party software platform. It says we anticipate a resolution is forthcoming. That third-party platform? The global cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike, which says the outage is not a security incident or cyber attack. The issue, it says, has been identified, isolated, and a fix has been deployed. This is very much a global issue. Police in the US state of Alaska say their 911 emergency phone lines have been affected. Supermarket checkouts in Australia have crashed. And the outage has hit security machines during preparations for the Paris Olympics, forcing staff to carry out manual checks. As and when systems do get back online, it's unclear whether it'll be business as usual or if it will take some time for all those impacted to clear the backlog. Nick Johnson, BBC News.
Well, one of the biggest impacts so far has been on transport and air travel in particular. More than 1,300 flights have been cancelled already around the world, and that number is rising. Well, Lorna Gordon is at Edinburgh Airport. Lorna, what has the advice been to passengers there?
Well, you know, on a normal day in the summer, this airport would deal with about 56,000 passengers both arriving and departing, and this has caused significant disruption to many people's travel this morning so far. It has affected every system in this airport, from the Wi-Fi to the check-in to security. The systems are now back up and running, but you can see that the airport is absolutely rammed as the airlines work their way through the passengers trying to check in. Some flights have been cancelled. The airport expects that number to rise because there's a knock-on effect, of course, with so many aeroplanes out of position. But there's a well-practiced plan here at the airport to help passengers, 50 staff on hand to try and relay information.
Lorna, thank you. Well, that impact is being felt around the world. Let's head to Europe next. Damien McGuinness is at Berlin Brandenburg Airport. What's been happening there, Damien?
Well, earlier today, the airport was completely shut down, essentially. When we arrived a few hours ago, most of the flights were cancelled on the board. That has now changed. Most flights appear to be running, so the occasional flight is cancelled, but certainly the queues are quite long. And I've been chatting to people who have been waiting at the counters of airlines for 6-7 hours waiting for information. They say there's not enough people manning those counters to give them information. The people at the airport are doing their best, but you know, it's just not enough information coming through. What we're seeing now, though, is the odd plane is taking off, which is good news for people hoping to travel. The difficulty is, at the best of times, this airport is completely rammed at this time of year because this is the week when children go on school holiday in this whole region round Berlin. And now what we've seen is this disruption has led to large queues, and I think we're going to see a day or two of the airport trying to catch up on this. Across Germany, we've seen similar situations, but probably the worst has been here in Berlin.
Damien, thank you. Well, let's go to the UK's busiest airport, Heathrow. Our transport correspondent, Katie Austin, is there. And Katie, this was supposed to be, as Damien was saying there, it's the holidays, one of the busiest days of the year.
Yeah, and for the UK, this is meant to be the busiest day for air travel of the year so far, with actually the highest number of UK flight departures due to take off since before the pandemic. Summer holidays really getting underway now, of course, and we are due to see something of a bumper summer for air travel. That means that everything is pretty stretched, and if anything does go wrong, it can have a really big impact. And airlines around the world have been affected to various degrees by what's happened today, some resorting to manual processes to get passengers on their way. As you say, globally at the moment, it looks like about 1,400 flights have been cancelled in and out of the UK. At the moment, that figure stands at about 100 cancellations so far.
The technical outage has hit travel around the world, affecting many airlines and airports. British Airways and Ryanair, just some of the carriers unable to use their IT systems as normal. Edinburgh Airport stopped accepting incoming flights. People whose departures had been cancelled were asked to leave. At Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport, a major hub, the impact has been huge. Dutch airline KLM suspended most of its operations. Flights have been taking off and landing at Heathrow, Britain's busiest airport. But there are delays and cancellations on one of the busiest days of the year here.
Among those affected has been American Airlines, and here at Heathrow Airport Terminal 3, for a time this morning, passengers were turning up to be told they couldn't drop off their bags and they just had to go away and wait for more information.
I checked in online last night on my phone, so we just need to get our bags through the bag drop, and then we were going to go to our gate, but there's no gate yet, and there's no bag drop.
So what, you can't check in or drop your bags or anything?
I can check in, but I can't drop my bags. So I've got tickets, I've got my bag checked, I just can't leave it.
Many of Britain's train operators have seen an impact. Most services are running, but in some areas there have been short notice changes and cancellations and problems with passenger information systems. The Port of Dover also had IT outages early this morning, but it hasn't resulted in significant queues. People trying to fly today are being told to check the status of their flight before setting off to the airport and check if they need to arrive early. On such a busy day, even when systems are up and running again, it'll take time for things to get back to normal. Katie Austin, BBC News.
Well, many GP practices and pharmacies around the UK have been facing difficulties with their systems. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, is at a hospital in London and can tell us more. Hugh.
Well, the position at most hospitals, as far as we can see, is that critical and emergency care has not been affected. There certainly are a few problems with some IT systems relating possibly to patient transport and IT backup and that sort of thing. One hospital, not this one, has told me that for planning staff rotas and rosters and bringing in people for extra shifts, that has become very difficult because that system has been affected. But much the biggest impact is with GP services, most of them who use an electronic medical records system. That is not working, so they can't get access to records or details of previous consultations or test results and that sort of thing. But the message from GP practices is if you need urgent care, needing to see a GP or talk to a GP, phone systems should be working, but only if it's urgent. They're resorting to pen and paper. Even with prescriptions, they're having to write out prescriptions just like they did in previous times. So clearly it is very difficult out there for general practice. This seems to be a problem affecting England, and not all practices, but most of them affected. But as far as we can see, a very limited impact in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland because of different systems. But the message from NHS England is that patients who need urgent and emergency care should dial 999 as usual, should use 111 but only sparingly if they are unwell. But clearly, across many parts of the NHS in primary care GP services, this is a problem and they're hoping it can be resolved pretty quickly.
Thanks, Hugh. Businesses across the country have seen their computer systems affected this morning as well. Our business correspondent Theo Leggett is at the City of London. What's the reaction been there, Theo?
Well, the City of London, the financial district, is part of an international industry and people communicate across international borders using computers. And we have seen the knock-on effects throughout the global industry. So banks in Australia, banks in China, Metro Bank here in the UK, they've all suffered effects. There have been trading platforms that have suffered problems. So trading in currencies has been disrupted, trading in oil, in gas, in other energy stocks, that's been affected. Now, the London Stock Exchange says it's been trading smoothly, but there have been problems with information systems that traders rely on to get the information they need. So there's been this large level of disruption. In terms of individual shares, the transport sector and the leisure sector has been badly hit. Share prices have been falling for companies like International Airlines Group, that's British Airways parent, EasyJet, Ryanair, and that's because people are concerned about the impact on these companies with the big summer travel period just coming up, and insurance companies as well, because if there is a compensation bill to be paid, they'll be the ones who ultimately have to pick up the tab.
Theo, thank you. The government says officials have already attended an emergency COBRA meeting and that it's working closely with the sectors that have been hit. Our deputy political editor, Vicky Young, is in Downing Street. Vicky, what can they do to help?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, isn't it? You've got a real sense there of the breadth of disruption, and Downing Street saying this morning that, of course, they're very aware of the impact that this is having, and I think, in a sense, their role is to have an overview of all of this. Now, they say that the government departments are working closely with all the relevant companies and the industries to offer their support to make sure that they've got what they need to try and get back up and running. Officials covering all the areas, all these sectors, have held a COBRA meeting, as you've said there. That is the Whitehall's emergency unit. There are no plans at the moment to escalate that to a ministerial level, but of course those officials are keeping ministers up to date on what is going on. Now, they said this is not a security or a hacking incident. We've heard that, haven't we, from the company involved. The government's saying no impact on 999 services, but as we were hearing from Hugh there, GP surgeries have been affected. So the government's role really is to offer support to talk about resilience, this is a very important part of the government's work here, isn't it? And of course, they will continue to monitor the situation.
We can cross over back to Nick Marsh, our correspondent in Singapore. Nick, who you have been on this from the very beginning, obviously with the time difference there. You were impacted a lot earlier than the UK and now arguably the US. Just bring us up to date with what your assessment is of this statement from Crowdstrike, because until now we weren't sure exactly what happened.
Yeah, we actually thought we'd probably be in for the long haul with this. The longer time went on without finding a fix. Now they say they've identified this issue and they are fixing it. So it kind of seems like, well, like the end of the beginning of this issue, if that makes sense. Hopefully, for the sake of the many millions of people affected all around the world, on pretty much every continent, this will get resolved reasonably quickly. But if you speak to people who know a lot about these things, the consensus seems to be that you're going to have to do some kind of manual reboot. So even if there is a patch applied to this corrupted software, it's a sort of hands-on keyboard situation where you have to get on each individual endpoint, so basically computer, and restart it, which, okay, if you're in a small shop or something like that, okay, that's fair enough. You can do that pretty quickly. But if you're a massive organisation or you've got 500 check-in terminals at an airport, that's going to take a considerable amount of time. But we do, at the moment, seem to be moving in the right direction.
So moving in the right direction, and when Crowdstrike in their statement, when they said that Mac and Linux hosts are not impacted, we're talking about just obviously Microsoft products, but we've seen that how many different areas, parts of our lives are dictated by that, are supported by that.
Yeah, exactly. Shows you how reliant we are basically on a form of technology. And when that doesn't work, and ironically, the source of the problem was actually supposed to protect systems from attacks because it is a software which is anti cyber attack. When that doesn't work, because it's right at the heart of the system, everything seems to go down. And so many countries, so many organizations, banks, airports, financial systems, supermarkets, hospitals, emergency services, you name it, you name the place, you name the system, they seem to be using it. And if that goes down, it has all these kinds of widespread effects. When the news started to come through a few hours earlier, just here in the newsroom, it was actually all from Australia initially. You know, it was 7-Elevens and Sydney Airport, Melbourne Airport. So we thought, okay, well, this is a localized issue in Australia, and Australian companies were coming out with statements. But then slowly but surely, as the world started to wake up and get on with its day, you started to hear reports from here in Singapore. Changi Airport affected. The Straits Times newspaper website went down for a while. And then as you guys started to wake up in the UK and in Europe, then you were getting more and more reports as people started to switch their computers on, and this blue screen of death that we keep talking about started popping up in practically every city around the world. So it shows you how really interconnected and reliant we are on these systems. But like you say, hopefully a fix now is being deployed, and we're just going to have to wait and see how long it's going to take to sort of wade through all this disruption that we've already seen in the matter of a few hours.
And when you talk about disruption, my goodness, Nick, we've got UK Transport Secretary has just issued a statement, Lou Hay, saying that we are aware of IT failures impacting several transport operators and terminals today. We're working at pace with industry and across government on the issue. There are no known security issues at present, kind of referring back to what Crowdstrike, their statement, that this isn't a security breach, but it just shows the amount of impact across so many different sectors. Just while we've got you in Singapore, Nick, so what was the transport situation like there where you are? I guess you've been tied to your desk, obviously, but around you, what have people been saying?
Okay, so right here in our newsroom, Kasia, touch wood, everything has been pretty calm. Nothing has gone down so far, so I've been able to talk to you and give you updates. Outside of our bureau, in our building, one of my colleagues saw an electronic advertising board which had gone completely blue, and he said people were taking pictures of it. You know, obviously the news had been spreading. In our newsroom, everything fine so far, but there are some organisations that have been affected, like I said, Straits Times, website had been affected. Changi Airport, one of the biggest airports in Asia, in the world, actually has had some disruption. I think it kind of depends on the airline and on the terminal you go to. So the budget terminals, which require you to check in once you arrive, or some of the airlines require you to check in on the electronic check-in desks, they obviously saw some pretty big disruption, and I've seen images and videos from there where the queues have been getting bigger and bigger, staff actually writing flight numbers on whiteboards. But if you're in a terminal where you can check in online, and most people do check in online electronically beforehand, it seems pretty smooth. And Singapore Airlines, the biggest airline here, have said that there's been no disruption to any of their flights. There's been some disruption to their booking hotlines and things like that. And the latest that I saw when I was checking on this is that 80% of flights were undisrupted, which compared to some airports that we've seen around the world, I mean, we were just looking at Delhi just a short while ago, and also some of the Australian airports at the very beginning of this problem, it's not too bad. So things so far are not great, but they could be a lot worse, and things do seem to be getting smoother and smoother. At least that's what I'm hearing the last time I heard when I was checking on what was going on at Changi Airport.
Welcome to The World Today, an hour of international news from the BBC. It's been a day of worldwide IT chaos after a global outage hit systems in multiple countries, affecting millions of people. More than 4,000 flights have been cancelled globally, banking and healthcare have been affected, and some TV channels have been taken off air. A cybersecurity company, Crowdstrike, says it found a defect in a software update for users of Microsoft Windows and that a fix had been put in place. Microsoft said their apps and services have now recovered. But the computer difficulties caused some of the biggest US and European airlines to ground their planes, causing chaos at airports around the world. Well, this is the airport in Berlin, in Germany, where queues have been forming all day. At the airport in the Spanish capital, Madrid, you can also see the passengers waiting for their flights. Airports in the Italian capital, Rome, have also been severely affected. And this is the moment at London Gatwick Airport that electronic boards came back to life. Long queues had formed there, as well as at Heathrow Airport and Stansted, one of the worst affected in Europe. Let's hear from a passenger stranded at Gatwick.
So people are tired. They've been handing out water. The boards don't really say anything. It's just pointing you to airlines. There is an announcement that comes out saying due to a global issue, and we'll work to resolve the issues, but nobody's sure if we're even going to fly. So we can't leave because we don't know, but we're pretty convinced that our flight's not going to happen today.
Well, this is Newark Airport in New Jersey, where planes are grounded. Airports across the US were affected. Changi Airport in Singapore, one of the world's busiest airports, said it was manually checking in the passengers of some airlines. In Australia, large queues of travellers have also been waiting at Sydney Airport's domestic terminal. Let's hear from people there.
It's unfortunate. It's everywhere. Can't do much about it. Just trying to get to my girlfriend in Brisbane. I haven't seen her in a while. So maybe just book a new flight with Virgin, if possible. Gonna try my luck, I guess.
We were meant to fly out at 5, and then about 20 minutes ago we got the announcement that it was cancelled. So yeah, we've just been hanging around really with no information. I tried to call Jetstar as well to reschedule my flight, but they said I couldn't reschedule it because I was already checked in. So yeah, we would have left ages ago, but yeah, it's basically what we were doing.
We'll be getting more from airports around the world a little later in the programme. But first, with a look at exactly what happened and how it's affected patients, passengers and businesses, Here's our technology editor, Zoe Kleinman.
The world woke up this morning to global chaos.
Massive tech outages are impacting airlines, businesses, offices, companies worldwide.
Airports were affected with thousands of flights grounded all over, from the UK to Hong Kong to the US.
My husband, they put him on a 10 a.m. flight and then the rest of us tomorrow, so that's not going to work.
This flight radar data shows the sky emptying out as the outage took hold. Here, medicine deliveries to pharmacies were disrupted and GPs in England had problems accessing patient records. It even affected software used by broadcasters and rather abruptly took some TV channels off air. The cause?
At Crowdstrike, we monitor trillions of cyber events.
A single update from this US antivirus company. You may have never heard of the cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike before, but it has nearly 24,000 customers around the world, many of them huge organisations like airlines and banks.
We stop a lot of bad things from happening.
We're deeply sorry for the impact that we've caused to customers, to travelers, to anyone affected by this, including our companies. So we know what the issue is. We're resolving and have resolved the issue now. It's recovering systems that are out there.
So what went wrong? First of all, to be clear, this was not a hack or cyber attack. You don't need to change your passwords. A faulty update meant millions of Microsoft users saw this screen pop up. If you know it, it'll make you shiver. The blue screen of death. It pops up when there's a critical error affecting the operation of your PC, in this case accompanied by an unending loop of trying and failing to restart and launch properly. It only affected machines running Microsoft, but there are a lot of them. And what's the fix? Well, it's not straightforward. Every single machine affected needs a manual reboot in safe mode, which is not as simple as turning it off and on again. Microsoft says some people have had to do it 15 times, so it could take a while. Spare a thought for IT departments.
There will be someone in Crowdstrike who will be in a lot of trouble right now for not getting this right, and there will be a lot of people working this weekend in businesses all over the world to try and fix this problem and to patch it up. But at the same time, you know, this is the price we pay for being so reliant on digital infrastructure.
From travel chaos to grocery shop payment problems, there'll now be tough questions about the damage done by one faulty update. How did it slip through Microsoft's safety nets? The cybersecurity world still advises that it's a good idea to keep on top of software updates, although perhaps today is not the day to bang that particular drum. Zoe Kleinman, BBC News.
With us now is our senior technology reporter, Chris Vallance. Just how frantic would things have been in the Crowdstrike offices today?
A really bad day. Well, let's be honest, night in the office. So I was texting somebody who would be in the eye of the storm, as it were, chasing them for a statement about what's going on. They responded to that message at UK time, around about 10:30. So that's the wee small hours in US time. It's clearly, you know, it was all hands on deck, working non-stop.
How could they have released a software update then without sufficient checks in place to prevent this happening?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And you know, if the lawsuits fly, perhaps it will come to that. But there is obviously a process of checking this sort of stuff before it rolls out. But I think a lot of people want to know, how did that go wrong? How did that fail?
This was a huge scale in terms of what it did. It was annoying, but how serious was it ultimately?
I think in terms of the organisations that were affected, it was from things like children's TV channels right through to a significant percentage of global flights. We also saw some healthcare organisations affected. So in terms of seriousness, I mean, we have seen this kind of thing before where a widely used service goes wrong and lots of other things go wrong. It's like, you know, one of these services catches a cold, everyone else gets it. But with this, we really saw, I think, a pretty unprecedented range of organisations affected globally.
But some were affected and others weren't, even using the same systems. How can that be?
Well, firstly, this affected Microsoft products. So if you're on Apple, if you're on Linux, it's not going to affect you. Secondly, I think it's certain Microsoft systems. And then it depends on how critical the systems that go wrong are. So I think for a lot of this, we observe the effects, don't we? We see the flights cancelled. We see the TV channels go off air. When that stuff doesn't happen, and lots of people having bad days in the office, but nothing's critically breaking, we don't notice it.
We heard Zoe talking about what the fix is. I mean, how beholden is everybody then to CrowdStrike, or is there some way that you can kind of bodge it yourself?
Well, I mean, in a sense, the fix is a bit of a bodge because it's effectively asking you to turn it off and turn it on again and delete the affected update. This snappily named, I think it's C000000291.sys, which many people would have not noticed, I suspect. But the fix, in a way, is just is that old adage when tech goes wrong, turn it off, turn it back on again.
Yeah, I do that a lot with my phone, I have to say. Just very briefly then, does this mean that we're too reliant on too few companies, too few systems?
That's been a big argument. Certainly people see these things happen. They see these systems wiped out that everybody relies on. They say, yes. Others say, look, these big systems, they've got the resources to invest in security. They mean that all our systems work together. They're interoperable. We're not in the days when we all had different word processing systems and you were kind of trying to figure out how to get one document into another. So there's pluses and minuses on that.
Chris Vallance, thank you very much. Let's speak to futurist K.D. Adamson. Thank you very much for joining us. Just tell us quickly what a futurist is for people who might not know.
We worry about the future so you don't have to.
Thank you. So surely some bright spark somewhere will have foreseen this happening, even if the future necessitates us having systems like this.
Well, as we've just heard, this really is an issue of invisible infrastructure. And, we're used to using infrastructure in our daily lives that we can see in front of us up until, the last sort of 30 or 40 years. And what's now happened is we have this invisible infrastructure that has been built all around us that no one's really had any understanding of. And successive, governments around the world have just allowed companies to build out this commercial infrastructure. And then we've started to base all our really critical, daily lives and bits and pieces all on this infrastructure. So it's, as your previous correspondent was saying, it's concentration of dependence that's the real worry here. So yes, people have foreseen this, and people have been saying for a long time that when you have a company like Microsoft that has 72% of the PC market, when you have Microsoft and AWS between them having virtually 50% of the global cloud market, these are points of failure that the world should be taking account of, and we really shouldn't have them.
How much of a wake-up call is this then, and what can be done to prevent something like this happening again if cost efficiency means a concentration into certain systems? Diversification might be appealing, but surely it will be more expensive and therefore off-putting.
Well, yeah, that's the core of it, and this is where I put my sort of bigger futurist hat on and talk about the fact that what we've used technology for up until now, as you correctly say, is to optimize. It's been about cost reduction and cost efficiency. But the problem is that the world is changing, from a geopolitical, from a climate, from a biodiversity, all sorts of reasons. We are seeing a very changed world, a multipolar world, all sorts of conflicts and difficulties arising. Now, when you optimization works when you've got a pretty good understanding of what the conditions you're going to operate in, because the whole idea of optimization, right, is that you take the slack out of the system. You just make it do what you know it needs to do and don't spend money on the other things. But in uncertain conditions, the priority is to adapt. It's about resilience. And actually, this then becomes a question of value. What do we value? Because up until now, technology has been all about how do we increase, how do we make money out of it? How does it increase our growth, our economies, all these other things? But now we need to have a different conversation, and we have to start saying, yes, this may be slightly more expensive, but what value does that bring at a societal level? When you're talking about having, operations cancelled and blood test results, are unable to be processed, these are human mission critical things, and they have a value beyond money. So we do actually need to have a slightly different conversation now about whether we can truly optimize any further, or whether we need to take a totally different approach, an ecosystem approach, and start talking about resilience instead.
If artificial intelligence then, as we know, is going to be used more and more in systems like this, it uses what's gone on in the past to build for the future. It means surely that your past has to be perfect So you have a flawless future as you're just baking in problems.
Precisely. And that's what we've seen AI doing already, whether that's, inequalities, when you look at AI being used for things like mortgage scoring or even job interviews, recruitment software. We've actually seen examples again and again where the inequities of the past are being baked in, as you say, to the systems of the future. And I think this is really important because what we've tended to do is de-emphasize human adaptability. We've assumed that you can sort of say, this is what a human does, and we'll just make a machine do it instead. But the kind of benefit that a human brings to any kind of scenario is an adaptability that these optimized algorithms, by definition, have engineered out.
Many people will be very pleased to hear you say that. Katie Adamson, futurist, thank you very much for talking to us.
Let's speak to our health correspondent now, Rob Sissons, who is at a surgery in Sutton in Ashfield that's been experiencing problems all day. Rob, talk us through what's been happening there.
Yeah, you might call this a bad day at the office. For the GP I've been speaking to here, it's been a difficult day because in common with many GP practices up and down England, they've not been able to get into the automated prescription service. This is a service which electronically sends prescriptions to pharmacies so that patients don't have to take a bit of paper. They can just turn up at any pharmacy and collect their prescription ordinarily. Instead, they've been having to use the software and print out the prescriptions. Now, we've been inside filming today, and the picture there is of patients having to wait longer than usual because this process is taking a bit longer. They're having to check more details, but this surgery isn't worst hit. Some practices are on another system which won't allow them to see any patient records on the computer, any test results, so it can be a really tough day. We've been talking to Dr. Carter Singh here.
It has caused us disruption in general practice, namely at our practice being unable to send electronic prescriptions over to the pharmacy and having to generate paper scripts to hand to the patient, which they can then take to the pharmacy physically to get their medication.
Unable to access prescription details, you rely heavily on the patients to tell you what medication they're on. That's not ideal though, is it?
Because the history might be inaccurate, especially if those people have got diagnoses such as dementia or problems with their cognition or problems with capacity, people with learning disabilities, for example.
Well, Rob, it's important to stress that these services like GPs, like various NHS hospitals, are already under an awful lot of strain, and this won't have helped, will it?
Won't have helped at all. I mean, it's the usual message, it seems as old as time. Choose your NHS services wisely. If you're unsure and if you've got questions about prescriptions, you can always dial 111 or check up information on the online website. Up the road in Nottinghamshire is the A&E unit at Kingsmill Hospital. This coincides with a really tough time for them. They've seen a 10% increase in the number of patients there since March, and they're seeing the kind of hospital pressures you'd usually associate with the depths of winter, with a shortage of beds and people having to wait sometimes 12 hours for a bed to become available in the hospital. So this is a really tough time for the NHS. And the NHS is sometimes criticised for not embracing IT enough, for not embracing technology and running fast enough with it. But I think what this shows today is that where you do rely on computer technology, it's all okay while it's working. And what are the backup plans if it's not? Remember the paper notes that many GP surgeries have. These are called the Lloyd George notes. Racks and racks of them are kept, but not every practice updates them with latest information. For example, if you're allergic to penicillin, that could be a key bit of data that's put on there. I think there'll be lessons to learn after today about how practices make contingency plans for this sort of thing. And what we know is that some will have been better than others at that in their pressured everyday work going on.
A little earlier on, I spoke to James Bohr, a chartered security professional. He explained why he believed the outage had happened.
The cause has now been found, and it appears to be a faulty file, a driver file, which is being deployed as part of CrowdStrike Falcon. Now, when Windows tries to boot, it loads that file or tries to call on that file, and that's why you get the blue screen of death.
So are you saying that one single file on one system can cause this global outage?
So this file has been deployed to everywhere, or is being deployed to everywhere that has Crowdstrike Falcon on it. So this is an incredibly widespread, widely used tool. So every single computer with Crowdstrike Falcon on it may get this file at any point, unless it's been pulled back by now. And that can, as we've seen, cause this outage.
So how could it be repaired? Does it mean that they have to send out another update, which then has to be loaded onto all of these machines around the world?
So the problem is, because it's the blue screen of death, you can't actually just roll out another update to fix it. You have to manually have someone reboot the computer into what's known as safe mode, delete the problem file, and then reboot it again. So for some systems, that's just not going to be possible, where they've not got remote management. People will have to drive out to them. People will have to go into data centers. And while it's relatively quick to do this, when you're talking about thousands upon thousands of systems and it can't be automated, the minute or so it takes each time is going to add up.
Yes, so from what you're saying, this could last for a very long time, because if it is big businesses, small businesses, of course, global companies will have a tech team that can do this. But from what you're saying is every computer that has got the blue screen of death is going to have a human come out to try and fix it.
Pretty much, that's exactly it. Now, the instructions are easy to follow, so there will be posts about them, there will be reports about how to do this fix coming out, and people will be able to go in and do it themselves for their own laptops. The other thing is, small businesses are less likely to have Crowdstrike Falcon, which may well be useful to them at this point, but larger ones, it's incredibly popular.
And Microsoft have issued a statement. Is it because a lot of what the Microsoft infrastructure has this product on it as standard?
So the Microsoft side, we're not actually that sure about at the moment. Now, if it's Azure affected, as far as anyone knows, they don't deploy Crowdstrike Falcon themselves, but it is available in their cloud marketplace. And again, it's a widely used tool. So that may be behind the Microsoft cloud outages.
You may not know the answer to this question, but surely before something like this is rolled out, it is checked and double checked by firms.
When you're dealing with incredibly complex software, we're talking a lot of code, a lot of files involved. This is a tool that has been developed over years and grown and grown and grown. Things do get overlooked. Now, I would say, yes, they should have checked better, and make no mistake, people are probably going to die because of this outage, because it's affecting emergency services and hospitals. So there really isn't an excuse. Yes, they should have tested it.
I suppose it also shows just how around the world we are now reliant on systems like this for every single bit of daily life that we are used to. You know, train services, going to buy something at the supermarket.
It's all about the convenience and speed of technology, and this is the consequence when it goes wrong, particularly when you have these massive companies with widely deployed tools. When something very small goes wrong, it can affect huge swathes of the world. Whereas back in the old days, when it was much more fragmented, it would be a much more localized failure, and that's easier to cope with.
I've just seen Hugh Pym, our health editor, has just spoken to one GP who says that we are only seeing the most unwell patients and we are hand writing a prescription. That just brings home to you just how reliant we are on these computers.
It's actually quite impressive that they are doing the handwriting. They have maintained these manual processes because you need to keep those up to date, and this is exactly why. But we are incredibly reliant. We are much less efficient without them. Our communications go down. Broadcasters have been affected, and this is probably going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, just explain, say, for example, a TV channel. How does this affect what a whole channel going down?
So if you've got a collection of servers which are producing and broadcasting, so they're generating the media and sending it out, and they've got this tool on them, and that file then goes to them and they blue screen, suddenly none of those will be doing it anymore. So we'll have some resilience in that there may be dozens of different servers there, so that if one of them fails, the others can pick it up. But when all of them fail, because they're all running the same software, then you've got a problem because there is no backup using different software.
Yes, I suppose, as you say, it is the way that technology has changed. In the old days, say, for example, with a credit card payment, there used to be a paper version of that. But as we've moved more and more to computers, all of that backup has gone.
And of course, ATMs may be affected as well, so cash machines. So if shops are affected and people can't use card, getting cash might be difficult. It's just this constant reliance on fewer and fewer technology providers leaves us in this position where we are incredibly vulnerable and incredibly affected by very small flaws, which inevitably will happen.
James, just stay with me because I just want to bring you a couple of other lines that we're getting. The airline KLM says that it has suspended most operations. Also, American Airlines, which is the world's biggest by passenger numbers, has told the BBC that no flights are currently being allowed to take off and that it is in contact with all flights that are currently in the air. It says the IT problems it's facing are because of this technical issue with Crowdstrike that is impacting multiple carriers. The airline says it is working with the IT security firm to fix the problem as quickly as possible. That's an interesting point, James, that American are making, that they are in contact with all of the planes that are actually in the air.
So that will be using different software, probably older software and different systems, because there are systems we build which are so critical. You can't just use standard consumer, and air traffic control is one of those setups.
Yes, of course. Do you see this problem getting worse before it gets better, because companies will be going in and turning computers on, or they're turning self-checkouts on as they come in, and it tries to boot this new update that has this corrupt file on?
So it depends whether this has been dealt with at source, and we won't know that until we either get reports that they're now starting fine or not. If it hasn't been, and it can be difficult to do because this is a file that is hosted across a large number of places, it will be downloaded from those. To prevent it being done, you'd have to update all of those, and that's going to be difficult in its own right. So I do see that there will be problems continuing and new problems arising over probably the next few days before things start getting sorted out.
Okay, for viewers who are just joining us, James, just remind us what we believe has happened and the implications of it around the world.
A driver file, that's a file that helps certain hardware or certain software to work on your computer, deployed by Falcon Crowdstrike, which is a cybersecurity tool used to protect computers from attacks. Appears to have been corrupted somehow. We don't know exactly how yet. And when a computer tries to boot with it, it puts it into what's known as the blue screen of death, where you can't do anything. Now, this requires a manual fix by a person to recover from. So it's not as simple as rolling back the update or sending out a new update. It requires someone to actually interact with that computer. And since this is such a widely used tool in very important systems, this is having a lot of knock-on effects.
Well, let's take you now into the outage and the impact it's had on travel globally. Let's cross now and speak to our correspondent, Ione Wells, who's at Reagan Washington National Airport. Ione, just talk us through what's been happening there.
Well, there has been pretty widespread disruption across the US. Obviously, the US is a huge hub internationally, but also domestically for flights. And this morning, lots of major airlines were announcing delays and cancellations, with the world's second biggest carrier, Delta, having to pause flights completely. They have now resumed some flights, but there was certainly significant disruption. Similarly, with other airlines like American Airlines, United. At this airport here in Washington, a lot of passengers have said that while they've had flights delayed, most are generally being able to be rescheduled for either later today or tomorrow. There have been some airports, though, across the country where we have seen visions of those blue screens that are now becoming infamous today, where basically there is no sort of update about what's going on. Screens are being completely shut off, and in those airports around the country, there have been long queues, crowds of people trying to work out what's happening, if they're able to check in bags, if they're still even able to go away at all. So certainly there is widespread disruption, and I think even if people's flights aren't necessarily cancelled, anyone travelling inside the US or trying to arrive or depart from the US today is going to face pretty significant disruption.
And very briefly, Ione, if I can ask you, is it a similar situation in America as it is here in the UK at the beginning of big holiday season?
That's right, it is the holiday season, so lots of people will be trying to get off on summer vacations or getting back. It's also, of course, a Friday, so people even trying to travel for the weekend may be disrupted trying to get around today. The US Secretary of State, Pete Buttigieg, has said they are monitoring the situation closely. President Biden's also been updated on the situation. Even though he's isolating with COVID, he's still working from home at the moment and getting updates on that. So the government is working closely to try and monitor the situation and what the latest will be. But this is really a kind of airline issue. It's the airlines and the operators that are really facing the sort of coalface of this technology wipeout.
Ione, thank you very much.
We were talking.
This is BBC News. Hello, you're with our continuing coverage. Do stay with us. Hello, if you're just joining us, you're with BBC News. We're following this story with you as it develops and bringing you all the latest updates. Hello, this is BBC News. Stay with us for all of the latest developments and what we know so far.
That was teeing up the first night of the proms at the Albert Hall. We'll talk about that with Emma in a little while. The head of a cybersecurity firm, which has caused a day of worldwide computer disruption by issuing a faulty software update, has apologised. The chief executive of Crowdstrike said the bug affected Microsoft Windows and a fix has now been issued. Microsoft, which operates Windows, said it's now taken action and all of their affected apps and services have now recovered. However, the effects have already been far-reaching. Some card payments have stopped working, pharmacies struggle to process prescriptions, and flights have been grounded, as our transport correspondent Katie Austin reports.
What a start to the summer holidays. This was Gatwick Airport. Passengers who should have been on planes forced to wait out delays.
So people are tired. They've been handing out water. The boards don't really say anything. So it tells you where to go, but there's no departure. There's no departure, like times of flights.
And this was the scene at Stansted. Many airlines have been unable to use their systems as normal. Ryanair told people to leave airports if their flight had been cancelled, as staff couldn't help them on site. At East Midlands Airport, the outage slowed everything down.
We've had to revert back to pen and paper, basically, and manually check each of our customers in. Of course, that takes longer for our customers. So we've seen a good operation, but it's a slower operation, and we expect that operation to continue today.
Edinburgh stopped accepting incoming flights. As queues built up, passengers tried to figure out their options.
There was nothing on the boards, there was no ground staff.
A little bit stressful. Hopefully it'll be okay now, but the staff at the airport have been great.
At Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport, a major European hub, more queues and disruption. Dutch airline KLM suspended most of its operations. The US was particularly affected. Look at all these planes stuck on the ground in Newark. Flights have continued at Heathrow, Britain's busiest airport, but there have been delays and cancellations on one of the busiest days of the year here. Among those affected has been American Airlines, and here at Heathrow Airport Terminal 3, for a time this morning, passengers were turning up to be told they couldn't drop off their bags and they just had to go away and wait for more information. On the railway, many of Britain's train operators have seen an impact. Most services have been running, but there have been short notice changes and cancellations and problems with passenger information systems. People whose flights have been cancelled should be offered rebooking or a refund, but probably not compensation, as it'll count as extraordinary circumstances. As the afternoon went on, some of the worst affected airlines were able to get up and running again. Back at Gatwick, that was the reaction to a system reboot after a nearly 7-hour wait to check in for a North Atlantic flight to Miami. But on such a busy day, the knock-on impact will take time to sort out. Katie Austin, BBC News.
Let's speak to Ione Wells, our correspondent who's at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. How have they been affected there today, Ione?
Well, here specifically, flights are starting to get up and running again. There have been a lot of delays and cancellations, with some people saying they've had flights pushed back to later today or into tomorrow. But more generally in the US, there has been widespread disruption across airlines. In particular, we know it's been more than 5,000 delays, over 2,000 cancellations. The airline that's been most badly affected has been Delta, the second biggest carrier in the world by passenger numbers. And their big hub in Atlanta, Georgia, has been particularly badly affected, with lots of big crowds, people waiting to see what is going on with their flights, and multiple cancellations reported as well. More generally across the US, there's been other services that have been impacted as well, everything from grocery shopping and payments to things like UPS deliveries, but also reported problems with 911, the emergency services, as well as some public transport systems as well. So I think there has been kind of widespread disruption, particularly, as I say, among airlines. Things are starting to get up and running again. Some of the major airlines like United, American Airlines and Delta, having previously paused some flights, are now starting to get them off the ground. But I think people here can expect disruption really over the weekend, because there will be not just the delays and cancellations today, but the knock-on impact that they've had, I think, causing continued chaos for people over the coming days.
Ione, for the moment, thank you very much. That's just a flavour of what things have been like at the Reagan Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport in the United States, a picture reflected, of course, in many parts of not just that country, but other parts of the world as well.
Good evening on a day of worldwide IT chaos after a global outage hit systems in multiple countries, affecting millions of people. Thousands of flights have been cancelled, banking and healthcare has been affected, including the NHS, and some TV channels have been taken off air. The problems were first reported at shops and banks in Australia. In the United States, several airlines grounded flights as the impact of the technical failure made itself felt. Soon there were delays and big queues at airports in the UK and elsewhere across the world. And here are just some of the places that were affected. The American cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike has admitted a defect in a software update it issued crashed Windows devices. The company is deploying a fix, but it's caused widespread mayhem. Well, tonight we'll be looking at exactly what happened and how it's affected patients, passengers and businesses. Our first report is from our technology editor, Zoe Kleinman.
The world woke up this morning to global chaos.
Massive tech outages are impacting airlines, businesses, offices, companies worldwide.
Airports were affected with thousands of flights grounded all over, from the UK to Hong Kong to the US.
My husband, they put him on a 10 a.m. flight and then the rest of us tomorrow, so that's not going to work.
This flight radar data shows the sky emptying out as the outage took hold. Here, medicine deliveries to pharmacies were disrupted and GPs in England had problems accessing patient records. It even affected software used by broadcasters and rather abruptly took some TV channels off air. The cause?
At Crowdstrike, we monitor trillions of cyber events.
A single update from this US antivirus company. You may have never heard of the cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike before, but it has nearly 24,000 customers around the world, many of them huge organisations like airlines and banks.
We stop a lot of bad things from happening.
We're deeply sorry for the impact that we've caused to customers, to travelers, to anyone affected by this, including our companies. So we know what the issue is. We're resolving and have resolved the issue now. It's recovering systems that are out there.
So what went wrong? First of all, to be clear, this was not a hack or cyber attack. You don't need to change your passwords. A faulty update meant millions of Microsoft users saw this screen pop up. If you know it, it'll make you shiver. The blue screen of death. It pops up when there's a critical error affecting the operation of your PC, in this case accompanied by an unending loop of trying and failing to restart and launch properly. It only affected machines running Microsoft, but there are a lot of them. And what's the fix? Well, it's not straightforward. Every single machine affected needs a manual reboot in safe mode, which is not as simple as turning it off and on again. Microsoft says some people have had to do it 15 times, so it could take a while. Spare a thought for IT departments.
There will be someone in Crowdstrike who will be in a lot of trouble right now for not getting this right, and there will be a lot of people working this weekend in businesses all over the world to try and fix this problem and to patch it up. But at the same time, you know, this is the price we pay for being so reliant on digital infrastructure.
From travel chaos to grocery shop payment problems, there'll now be tough questions about the damage done by one faulty update. How did it slip through Microsoft's safety nets? The cybersecurity world still advises that it's a good idea to keep on top of software updates, although perhaps today is not the day to bang that particular drum. Zoe Kleinman, BBC News.
Well, the outage has wreaked havoc on people's travel plans, with more than 4,000 flights cancelled around the world. At UK airports, there have been huge queues and delays, all on a day which is supposed to be one of the year's busiest. Our transport correspondent Katie Austin is at Heathrow for us now. Katie.
Yes, that's right. When it comes to flights, today was actually set to be the busiest for UK departures since 2019, before the pandemic. The summer holidays well and truly getting underway. But many airports and airlines, in fact, have been affected by this IT issue around the world. Some airlines having to resort to manual processes to get passengers on their way. And as we enter what is going to be a very busy period, it's important to remember that when it's so busy, if anything happens to get everything out of position, it can all add up to a really huge impact. What a start to the summer holidays. This was Gatwick Airport. Passengers who should have been on planes forced to wait out delays.
So people are tired. They've been handing out water. The boards don't really say anything. So it tells you where to go, but there's no departure. There's no departure, like times of flights.
And this was the scene at Stansted. Many airlines have been unable to use their systems as normal. Ryanair told people to leave airports if their flight had been cancelled, as staff couldn't help them on site. At East Midlands Airport, the outage slowed everything down.
We've had to revert back to pen and paper, basically, and manually check each of our customers in. Of course, that takes longer for our customers. So we've seen a good operation, but it's a slower operation, and we expect that operation to continue today.
Edinburgh stopped accepting incoming flights. As queues built up, passengers tried to figure out their options.
There was nothing on the boards, there was no ground staff.
A little bit stressful. Hopefully it'll be okay now, but the staff at the airport have been great.
At Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport, a major European hub, more queues and disruption. Dutch airline KLM suspended most of its operations. The US was particularly affected. Look at all these planes stuck on the ground in Newark. Flights have continued at Heathrow, Britain's busiest airport, but there have been delays and cancellations on one of the busiest days of the year here. Among those affected has been American Airlines, and here at Heathrow Airport Terminal 3, for a time this morning, passengers were turning up to be told they couldn't drop off their bags and they just had to go away and wait for more information. On the railway, many of Britain's train operators have seen an impact. Most services have been running, but there have been short notice changes and cancellations and problems with passenger information systems. People whose flights have been cancelled should be offered rebooking or a refund, but probably not compensation, as it'll count as extraordinary circumstances. As the afternoon went on, some of the worst affected airlines were able to get up and running again. Back at Gatwick, that was the reaction to a system reboot after a nearly 7-hour wait to check in for a North Atlantic flight to Miami. But on such a busy day, the knock-on impact will take time to sort out. Katie Austin, BBC News.
And you can get all the latest on the travel turmoil here online at bbc.co.uk/news. Well, that is the situation here. Let's look now at the travel impact across the world. In a moment, we'll speak to our correspondent Shaima Khalil, who's in Tokyo. But let's go first to Ione Wells, who's at Washington's Reagan Airport. And Ione, we know that US airlines have been particularly affected. What's the latest?
That's right. The main impact here in the US has been on airline travel. We know about 5,000 flights have now been delayed. About 2,000 have been cancelled completely. The airline that's been worst impacted is Delta, which is the world's second biggest carrier by passenger numbers. And their big hub in Atlanta, Georgia, has seen huge queues. Lots of people on social media saying that they've had multiple flights cancelled, a lot of travel chaos there. There's also been pictures from some airports around the US of those notorious blue screens of death, simply boards with no update about what's going on, what's happening to people's bags, what's happening to people's flights. So I think there is a lot of confusion. Certainly at this airport here, people are saying things are starting to get back up and running. People are having flights rescheduled either for later today or into tomorrow. So things are certainly starting to pick up. Elsewhere in the US as well, other services have been impacted, things like UPS for deliveries, also 911, the emergency services as well. So seriously, disruption kind of being faced across the country. I think, though, things are starting to pick up, but I think it is likely disruption will continue over the weekend as the knock-on impact of these delays and cancellation continues.
OK, thank you very much, Ione in Washington. Now to Shaima in Tokyo. How have services been affected there?
Well, the effect of the outage has varied in the Asia-Pacific region. If you speak to our colleagues in South Korea, for example, they've barely felt it. Here in Japan, it's been a mixed bag. We've been hearing this blue screen of death many times throughout the day. Thankfully, we haven't seen many of those here in Japan, especially where I am here in Shibuya, in the heart of the capital, Tokyo, famous for its screens and its neon lights. These have been going strong. In Narita Airport, for example, one of the country's biggest airports, the budget airline Jetstar Japan has been affected. It had to ground at least 20 of its flights. And again, we've been seeing these pictures of people manually being checked in, these whiteboards with handwritten notes of cancellations. All in all, I would say Japan had gotten off lightly. Compare that to Australia. This outage has affected them deeply and on so many levels. Universities, government agencies, blood donation centers, for example. Our colleagues at the ABC News Australia said that they haven't been able to function normally at the beginning of the day. In Brisbane Airport, for example, Jetstar has said that it grounded all domestic flights for the day. It's very late at night here in Asia Pacific. The region is going to wake up to see if this problem had been resolved or, well, if they'll have to deal with the knock-on effect of that outage.
Shaima, thank you. Well, for the NHS, it's GP practices in England and Northern Ireland that have been most affected, with doctors struggling to access their records and online bookings. Pharmacy services have also been hit. Here's our health editor, Hugh Pym.
So I am at the minute doing...
Life is usually hectic at GP practices, but a lot more so today. Most in England had no access to electronic patient records, frustrating for doctors and patients.
This has significant impact because actually the bulk of our workload, we need access to people's blood results and people's notes, and so there's a lot that we can't do. All we can really do is minor injuries and minor illness.
At some health centres, only the sickest patients were being seen, with other appointments cancelled.
Yeah, I tried to get an appointment today at the doctor's for 8:30. I was told, unfortunately, due to the systems being down, there was no appointments available, and to go to see the chemist.
I can't get my sick note updated, and unfortunately, I was about to be sanctioned by the Social Security Office.
Only written prescriptions are available, with pharmacists warning patients the electronic system has failed.
Anybody who's coming in for their prescriptions, we have to tell them to go away, go back to the surgery and then get the old-fashioned FP10s, which is the old green prescriptions, and then get that signed off by the doctor.
Really nice to meet you.
Ministers are monitoring developments across the health system.
There's a genuine glitch that's affected systems right across the world and is having a particular impact on GP practices and pharmacy. We're working with colleagues across government to get things back up and working as quickly as possible.
Hospitals say urgent and emergency care has not been affected, and if people have got appointments booked, they should come in as normal. But no one's denying that there has been an impact on some routine day-to-day activities at NHS trusts.
Unfortunately, due to the global IT issues, we're going to need to cancel your appointments.
While surgeries are postponing some patients and resorting to paper records, NHS England says phone systems are working and there are measures to manage the disruption. But while services in Northern Ireland and England are still affected, GPs can only hope the problems are resolved quickly. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
Well, around the world, banks, supermarkets and many businesses have been reporting disrupted services, with many unable to take digital payments. The cost to businesses worldwide is expected to be huge. Let's talk to our economics editor, Faisal Islam, who's in central London for us now. And Faisal, businesses will be counting the cost, won't they?
Absolutely, Rita. We've never seen impact of an IT outage like this on so many sectors, so many countries at exactly the same time. Right now, though, it looks like it's very highly disruptive rather than disastrous, but it isn't over just yet. Most keenly seen in the share price of Crowdstrike, that company that very few people had heard of up until this morning. Its shares on the opening on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange in New York fell 15%, losing several $1 billion in value. It's recovered a little bit, it's now down about 11%, but you can see that the value of that company has gone down as people seek the blame for it. Technologists around the world are saying that this is the biggest IT outage ever, including the founder of Tesla and X, the owner of X, Elon Musk, saying it's the biggest IT fail ever, and other experts concur